is Jessica Van de Jesus, a dining traveler, and I'm in Arlington, Virginia at Queen Mother's with the owner, Chef Rock Harper, and we met probably almost 2 years ago at the Kojo Show, and since then I've been following you and following your growth, but you have a whole story here in DC and in the culinary scene. I consider you probably one of the OGs in the DC culinary scene.
I'll take it.
And so how did it all start? I know that you are very influenced by your mother, your grandmother, so how did that spark to be in the culinary business begin?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me here. I appreciate you coming on down, checking me out. I think my start came, it's a little combination. You know, I always loved food. Food was everywhere in my family, no matter what, whether it be sort of sad times or happy times. Food was always an opportunity, that's what I call it, for my mother and my grandmother to entertain and to connect with folks on both sides of the plate, if you will. I have two older sisters and they had friends. So when they would come over and ask Lil Rockman to cook something, I'm gonna cook, you know, it's scrambled eggs or oodles or noodles, but anything to get a hug from a teenage girl as a 12-year-old boy, that sort of influenced me. It wasn't, you know, they weren't paying me any attention other than that. But it was in 8th grade that I took a home ec class. Shout out to Ms. Hill, my 8th grade home ec teacher, where I really made a lasagna, and you know, it was so good and people enjoyed it. My mother, I took it home. She ended up buying me ingredients so I could sell lasagnas out of the house.
Wow.
Yeah.
And this was where again? This was in...
So this is Alexandria, GW Middle School.
Okay.
So it was at that point where I realized, like, I wanted to be a comedian too, but I didn't really know how to go to college and make all of that work. But I understood, I got introduced to the concept of becoming a chef and selling food for a living. So it was really in 8th grade where I started to really dig and, you know, tell my mom, I think I might want to be a chef. So I was 13 years old where I thought I could turn into a profession.
And you ended up going down south, right, to college to be a chef?
Yeah, Johnson & Wales is where I got my sort of formal training. I had a program at T.C. Williams, my high school, it was 3 years. And that was pretty cool too. That gave me a leg up and really an intro. But Johnson & Wales where I got my degree.
And how do you combine, because I know that there's a lot of debate and, you know, we see it on social media and it's like schools trained chef versus self-taught. And for you, like, do you feel that school gave you that foundation that you needed? Like, if somebody was to come up to you now and say, hey, I want to be a chef, I want to be a restaurateur, what advice would you give them, given the fact that you do have that professional training?
Yeah, it's a great question, and one of the things that I've been training myself to do is to get out of either or thinking and think and both. So just in general, we like to pick. We love contest in a society. We love this or that, and I've gotten a lot of trouble for that. Right? But I think it's both. And one thing that I've learned from entrepreneurs and self-starters is that there's so much that I can take from their path and their experiences, and it's just no replacement for culinary school. I think the mistake that people make when entering this business is that they don't necessarily, maybe not to their fault, but they don't understand, they don't have an intention of, you know, people say, I just want to become a chef. Well, there's all different types of chefs, more now than when I was coming up. So my question is, what the culinary school is not, you know, for everyone. You don't want to spend $20, $40, $50, $80,000 to go and get something that's not gonna, you know, you're not gonna be able to make that back, right? So I think the thing is, it depends on what you want to do. In my podcast, I talked about and I got a stern talking to from one of my old professors for this, but I talked about culinary school not being as valuable or necessary. You can create a syllabus out in the real world and really guide your, and maybe make a little money, but at worst, you know, get educated for free. So with the advent of, you know, these online courses and YouTube, I think that culinary school is extremely valuable, right? There are things that they taught me there that people just aren't teaching, but the same is vice versa. There's real world experience that people that are self-starters are doing that I didn't learn in those walls. So I think it depends on where you want to go, and then you can form your education from there.
And you started, well, you had different roles, but I guess the one that you're best known for is your role at B. Smith, which is a very iconic restaurant in the DC area. And how was that time? Because I know that, when we look at DC 20 years ago, the dining options were more limited, and we see it now. I feel like I write about this stuff, and I can't keep up with all the restaurants and stuff, pop-ups and things opening up. So in your experience being one of these OGs, how have you seen that evolution from only having a few options to now having hundreds of options?
It's a wonderful thing to think about. And I was someone tweeted about this the other day about DC's evolution, and there's a lot of noise in DC, and that's not a slight at anyone. But I think, developers have come here, and all of the commerce and all of the traffic, and it's become a different town. It's becoming more like some of the bigger cities. So you just have people, you have buildings, and then you want to put stuff on the floor, on the basement. Right. So what happens is, that sounds like I'm throwing shade, but I'm not. I promise. What's happening is there's more opportunities.
You can throw shade here.
Okay. All right. This is not a shade free zone. Okay. Good. Good to know.
I love throwing shade. Okay. You follow me on Twitter.
You got it. Yeah. Duly noted. I forgot. I just wanted to make sure it was consistent with the show. So. What happened is, now this is a destination city more so than it was in the past. Like, all the chefs will go to New York or LA, I guess. Portland was a big dining town. Chicago. DC is where out-of-towners were coming now. Developers and all of these big money groups were saying, we can put restaurants here. We always had a really good dining scene. We always had culture. That's a myth. We've always had really good food. But like you said, it's just exploded. So how's that been? I love it. I love it, and part of me hates it because, as we've seen, on 14th, it's just some stuff is just the past 10 years, you're just doing too much. I say, y'all doing too much. You see the trendy stuff. You see 50 poke shops open up by guys that don't even know what poke means, or just all of these things that are just trendy, and people don't really understand the culture and the cuisine. It's just like, let's just open that in DC. So that's the part I don't like about it. As an eater, I love it, right? Because and as a chef, I'm a competitive guy. So it's just like Michael Jordan. You want to play against the best. And more people are coming to the city. That raises the level of just execution. So it's a love-hate thing, but it's good for the city. Bad for the rent prices, but good for the city.
And let's segue into that conversation, because I know I talk to especially a lot of restaurateurs of color, like Hispanic, Black, that they want to open a place in DC, but the rents are ridiculous. Or folks that that I've worked with that have had to shut their place down because the rent's too damn high.
Yeah.
So how do you see that also affecting what we get from the city?
Yeah. So I've been involved in some of these conversations and some of these deals over the years, and I've seen it, right? So I've seen how we were looking at $125 a square foot, which is crazy. Normal rent, just for anybody watching, $45 is still high. But we were looking at triple that at one point in the city. So who can afford that? People say, who can afford that? You see this big name or no name chef, he or she will come in and it gets financed by these sort of out-of-town multinational companies. And there's all these relationships, and regular people just don't know we can't afford a $20,000 rent. So, and we're excluded, or we don't have access to that world where you can get someone to finance your shop. And generally speaking, they don't want my food, like fried chicken, so-called soul food. Me personally, that's not something that people want to put on a shop at 11th and K, right? That's not something, they want to put Rock's fried chicken. Now, they might now, but that traditionally not.
But back in the day,
right.
We're looking for that business expense account lunch.
Expense account, or what they do is, and this is a conversation I had at a really massive space with it was a trust out of New York that owned this space in DC in Northwest, and a potential partner of mine brought me in. We were looking at the space, and I told him, my guy was black. These two guys are really good friends. And the race sort of matters. I'll give the context. Two white guys, they were really good friends with my guy who's black. He's gonna finance the whole deal. And I'm talking about the concept to him in front of them, and what kind of food do you want to do? I'm doing black food, and people always look at me crazy, like, what the hell is black food? So I sort of explain it, and what the guy said to him in front of me was, you might want to call that Southern, and they were really good friends, so they could talk real.
Yeah.
You might want to call that Southern or elevated or put some sort of spin on it. So what we see is, and this is my experience, but there are other people that have the same. What we see is big corporations from out of town can come in and do Southern or comfort food if it's so-called elevated, but locals, and you can engage in these deals, but locals with the same food, with more roots in the culture, have to change it and maybe morph it into something that, I'm not just talking about white tablecloths. Like, you have to change it into something that your grandmother wouldn't recognize. So this is where, these skyrocketing rent prices become a problem because they, not directly, but through a couple of steps, they shut out people that have been here forever. When you see a place like the Smith is a good example, or Ed.
Which is so weird seeing it on your street.
Yeah, right. And they serve comfort food. And I know it's out of Brooklyn, I think, or New York. And it's a beautiful place. But when I think that there's so many steps in place, and not to sort of take over the interview on that, there's so many things that have to happen in order for a local chef, DC, Maryland, Virginia, to get a 12th and U spot. It's just, it's prohibitive. And we've seen that sort of illuminate, we've seen that magnified. So when you look at 14th, you look at you look at Shaw, you look at Navy Yard, you just gotta think of, traditionally we call this Chocolate City.
Yeah.
This is, DC still is Chocolate City. The roots are there. So how come that hasn't resonated? How come that hasn't, that trend, when you see the top, or people that are already food creators, how come you don't see the black and the brown faces? So there's a lot of work to do, but that, to answer you, that was a long way around. There is, it's good to see the growth, but it's also a little troubling and challenging to see, who gets the benefit.
And I see that, you're doing your own thing, your concept is very unique.
Yeah.
And you come from, and I would say that B. Smith's was probably more of an upscale, casual experience. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
So how do you go from a more upscale, casual, let's sit down experience to more, and especially opening in a pandemic, and takeout is a thing now. So how do you transition from doing that type of work? Because when we did the interview, I know that you were doing more than being executive chef. You were doing a lot of the behind the scenes type stuff in a restaurant that's a big institution than to do your own thing.
B. Smith's is she was, may she rest in peace, she was legendary. And the beautiful thing about that restaurant, and I hope one day when I make a little more money and I got some time to write some movies, I'd love to do a piece on what that restaurant stood for. She was a consummate hostess. I mean, she was glamorous, she was classy, she was gorgeous, she had style, but her main thing was, be yourself. And she leaned into black culture so effortlessly. It wasn't like beating you over the head. That was her space, right? This is where, black folks weren't allowed in the East Wing back in the day when presidents used to, the presidential suite where B. Smith's was. And you have this woman that owns a restaurant there, and she didn't come in like brazenly, this is a black space, but it was a black space, dripping in black culture. So it was casual, it was upscale, white tablecloth, but she was a consummate host. We would host everybody from Capitol Hill, and some of the guys that you might not think belong would sit there and eat, a senator would be right there, and homeboy from the block would be in the next table over. It was that kind of space. Everybody felt comfortable. So the key takeaway from that is be yourself. And one thing I wanted to do with Queen Mothers was lean into the culture. We have everything we need. Fried chicken is good. Forget
let's talk about the present. Let's talk about this fried chicken that everybody is obsessed with.
Yeah.
And we see it all over Instagram.
Yes.
I've had it. It's really good. Make sure if you are in Arlington, you need to stop by and get some. So tell us about, your chicken sandwiches. What was your inspiration, your I guess you don't want to reveal that much more about your seasoning.
Not too much.
But not too much.
Yeah.
But yeah, what is that, what kind of experience you want to bring with, given obviously the current constraints that we have?
Yeah, I just want people to have great fried chicken and understand the highest quality of ingredients. I'm just bringing excellent technique. It's not sitting up under a heat lamp for 20 or 30 minutes, right? Right. Well, yeah, couple people. It's fried. It's very close to being organic chicken, raised right, no antibiotics, great ingredients, and I just want to put some pride back on fried chicken. I think we had it, and it's the best. It's everybody loves it, so I'm just doing it from my standpoint.
And where do you see this in the future?
Yeah.
Where do you see yourself, let's say, 5 years from now?
I want to use Queen Mothers to build community, right? So we serve smiles, honor culture, build community is our mission. So building community I want to use Queen Mothers to help other creators empower themselves, just to feel good. We should feel good about fried chicken and all the things it's meant for our community, our culture. But economically empowered. I want to use it as a model to show people how to make money, right? Chefs, creators, off of what you already have.
And I noticed that also on your social media channels that you're not the typical chef, like, oh, look what I cooked, which is cool too.
Yeah.
But, you also do give a lot of tips on, back of the house, how to run a restaurant, which is, something that you don't really see often from chefs. So I take some nugget. Not that I don't think I'll ever open my own restaurant, but
good,
no, you do. No, the more I work with you guys, the more I realize, no, this is not my thing.
Right.
But there are a lot of takeaways from the business perspective. Yeah. So I do see that, and that's why I wanted to interview you, because I was like, this is a person that does. A lot of people they talk, but you eat the food and it's good, and you're also giving back to the community.
Yeah.
Which is, so Queen Mothers, I love the name. So how did you come up with that name?
So my mother, I call her, everybody in my neighborhood calls her mother, right? A lot of people that grew up with didn't even know her name, right? That's because we call her mother. And it's very weird, right? There's a lot of people, we got cracked on, mother, what is that? This is a weird family. So that's a part of it. And she is a queen, right? She's regal. And when I say she, I'm speaking about my mother, my grandmother. I was inspired to reverse the trend and to amplify the need we have to put some respect on a Black woman's name in general, but definitely her culinary contributions. And if I dive down even further, I'm focusing on this one thing. It's fried chicken. And people don't like to be defined by that, but this is an example. We have everything we need. We should be proud of all of our culture. So let's not call it, it's nothing wrong, and this ain't no shit. It's not gonna be Rock's Chicken Shack, nah, that's not what we're doing. It's nothing wrong with the shacks. But we're gonna tell you that it's not a syrup bottle that was made out of some caricature for a century that made my ancestors appear to be, mammies and all of that jazz. We gotta reverse the trend. And somebody, I feel like Black chefs, who every time you talk to a Black chef, or any chef really, a lot of men chefs, where'd you get your inspiration? Your mama, my grandmama? Okay, I get that. But how does that look in your brand? So when my man says you point one finger, it's three pointing right back at you. So I had to ask myself that question. Rock, you want to open a new restaurant? How does all of the stuff that you say reflect in your brand? So queen is no higher, mothers. Let's put some respect on your own mom, and then have other people interact with the brand that way. So that's a long way around where it came from.
And You mentioned, Black culture and how people look at food. And I ask a lot of the folks, Latino folks too, is that I feel that our food, and when I say our food, Black food, Latino food, is always looked at, oh, it's a styrofoam container. Like, oh, I'm not going to pay more than, $10 for this or for that. And I even see it with our own people because, I worked at Puerto Rican restaurants and people are like, oh, I'm in Puerto Rico, I get that for $10. And I was like, you know how much rent is here? Like, you're paying mostly for rent. Yes. So what do you tell those people, and especially like our own folks, like how do we abolish that mentality of, that our food also has value and that we should pay a premium for our food?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. One, and fried chicken is usually cheap historically until some little French guy sous vide it and puts it in panko, and then it's $65 all of a sudden. Again, no shade. That's the third time I said that. That was shade, actually. I ain't mad at him for charging $65. I'm mad at everybody
who paid the $65.
Who paid the $65, but then when I charge $65, it's different. So that for us, if we having a conversation on this side of the cookout, we have to honor our own labor, right? Because if I sell a $4 sandwich, this is where the business part comes in. I understand that the numbers, this is why a lot of mom and pops can't make it. The question is not, why is your stuff so expensive? The question is, why is their sandwich so cheap? I can lay out culinary math all day. We look at some of these $1 and $3 things, and don't get me wrong, I'm an American like everybody else. I eat the garbage sometimes too, don't get me wrong. I haven't had a couple of dollar burritos. But when I do the business math, if they're charging me $1 or $2, and we're saying great food cost is 30%, or excellent food cost is 20%, that means that they spend, if it's $1, they spend 20 cents on that. One burrito. That is, you got to ask yourself, what is in that? So when we add
getting that meat.
Exactly, the free sauces, the accoutrement, the things that you can add to it. You can have a $3 sandwich. Not mad at it, but the question shouldn't be why is yours so cheap. It should be why is it so expensive? What are you paying these people? What is their labor worth to you? Why do they have to work so hard? Why do they have to sell 1 million chicken sandwiches in order to make minimum wage? One thing that Queen Mothers is doing, we're going to give you excellent product. We're going to give you excellent quality. We're going to give you excellent customer service, and the people are going to be taken care of. So we have to say, maybe I don't need to eat 3 chicken sandwiches a day. I'm not mad at that. So I think it's up to us on this side of the counter to recalibrate how we honor and view our own culture. I think there is a place for the $5 and the $3. Yeah. We're going to do some of that stuff in Black History Month. It's to tell that story because we've built ourselves up, and our grandmothers weren't selling $50 plates out the back of their home. They were selling the plates to feed the community and to cover their costs and maybe make a little money. There's a place for that, but in business, we have to honor our own.
So you're here in Arlington. You've been here now for how long?
About 2 months.
2 months, and I see every time I see it's like sold out. So it's been a good move for you.
It's been great. I'm a Virginia guy. I work pretty much in DC, but my heart is in Virginia. This is where I'm from. So it's been good. Arlington's been great to us so far, and we're only getting better.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me here. Make sure you check out Rock Harper at Queen Mothers on Instagram. You guys are everywhere. Come here, order. We're in a pandemic, so I guess you can eat in here in Virginia?
You can eat in here. We limited capacity, but you can pick up, and we got all the options. Yep, delivery too.
And it's not that far from DC, so it's just a quick hop over the river. So definitely come and check Rock. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jessica.
I'm so happy that we're doing this, and now I'm going to go and eat myself a chicken sandwich.
There we go.
Bye.
All right.